Hi, I'm Kalena and
And I'm Jayne Frishia.
And this is On the Other Foot, a no-holds-barred look at the world of dance.
Each week, we bring you a podcast on nutrition, lifestyle, and mental health for regular people who happen to dance.
Every Tuesday, we're going to take on a topic in the dance world that isn't spoken about enough and approach it honestly for our listeners. Isn't that nice of us? All right, hello everybody, this is Kalena, and I'm here with Jayne, and you're listening to On the Other Foot. Today we're going to be doing an Uncut talking about sacrifices that dancers make for training, and after the break we're going to be doing a little Q&A with some questions that you guys submitted for us to answer. So, Jayne, where do you want to get started with kind of talking about, what we sacrifice to train as dancers?
That's a good question. Maybe let's just start talking about, I don't know what age most people are when they start training, if they want to get to a professional or pre-professional level. What age were you when you started? Well, you have a different story because you started in gymnastics.
I was a little later. Yeah. I think generally a lot of people who dance for a really long time, a lot of people start really, really young, 3 or 4 even in little toddler classes. But for me personally, and a lot of people that I know, the artistic director of the studio that I work for, she started when she was 11, I believe. And I started when I was 10, but like Jayne said, I did gymnastics beforehand. So I kind of had a little bit of experience with moving around and stuff like that, being physical. And I was spending a lot of time in the gym. So it's not like I was really just sitting on the couch doing nothing. My cat is going ruthless on the door right now. Ryu, could you not do that right now? My dear. Ryu is our special guest today. She wants to be our guest, apparently. But yeah, I started when I was 10. Yeah. And I mean, even though that's a little bit late, I ended up doing a couple years professional. I mean, it's not like I was an ABT, but I mean, I made it pretty far and stuff like that. So I think you don't have to be super tiny, but it is one of those professions that's really hard because you have to get started. And even if you do get started late, like me and a lot of people that I know that started later, you do still need to be someone that has that natural physical ability and naturally flexible, naturally strong in order to be able to catch up. Otherwise, you just have so much catch up work to do. But I also know kids that come in when they're 3 and 4, and no matter how hard they work, sometimes it's just not what's meant for you. So I don't know. It's kind of hard to say what the perfect age to start training at is, just because there's so much variability in the different types of skills that you need in order to be successful as a dancer.
Yeah, there's definitely no perfect age to start. I will say that most people I've heard of becoming professionals start between the ages of 3 and 11. There are very few people who have started at like Misty Copeland is a I started at 14 story. And that's really rare. I myself started at 3. There's it's a low level of time commitment between the ages of 3 and 11. 11 is when you start training more intensely, which is why a lot of people who start around 11 can still get to a professional level. But it is a big monetary commitment, even if you're just putting your 3-year-old in we dance around with ribbons class. So yeah, there's definitely not an age that you can start at that you're guaranteed to be a prima, because no one's ever guaranteed to be a prima, like Kalena is saying. But from I'm sure from a perspective of my parents who had me pretty young and weren't balling when they were 20, I'm sure it was,
as many people are not.
Yeah, as most people are not. I'm sure, in terms of because the theme of the Uncut is the sacrifice people in the arts have to make, that's a pretty big monetary sacrifice to put your child in tap around class.
Yeah. To I think that for a lot of young parents to justify that is really hard. And for me as a teacher too, sometimes I'm oh my gosh, I really want to make this worth their while, because I feel really bad, that dance classes are so expensive. But even when you're little, dance is meant to look easy but be hard. So even if you're just doing my kids, I could sit those kids in a room. We could do triplets for an hour straight and still they would not get it. they would just keep fumbling around. There's always 18 steps in there. I'm like, there's 3 steps. It's called triplet. You take 3 steps. I'm like, let me see you walk for 3 steps. And it's just so funny to me, like things like that. But it looks like they're just walking around when we do that. So sometimes the parents peek their heads in and I'm like, ah. Oh, another thing I wanted to mention is that male dancers too, like they have a lot of male dancers start a lot later. And I think that part of
Yes.
that is also because I think that also has a lot to do with the kind of natural strength and flexibility, like guys as a biological subset of human beings are born with a little bit more like natural ability to build muscle and natural ability to build
Mm-hmm.
strength a lot quicker than most girls are. So I think that I've heard of a lot more guys starting a lot later, but I do still think that like those guys still work really hard. Like they work their tails off
Oh,
and they
yeah,
have to
for
get
sure.
flexible. They have to do all this stuff. So I mean there's just so much variability. I think there's a lot of stigma around how old you need to be before you start dancing or how late is too late to start dancing, but I mean really it's just a matter of hard work and also just a matter of like biology and how well you can build that flexibility and build that strength as fast as possible, to like succeed, which stinks, but a lot of sports are like that.
Yeah. Okay, so maybe so you've begun your lessons, you're between the ages of like
Yes.
3 and 11, and you get to 11 years old, and your studio is now like, okay, you're taking class 5 times a week now, maybe 6 times a week. They start like suggesting privates. What was that like for you in terms of your 11 to 18 years? Like, how did being a dancer and having to honor your commitments to your studio, like,
Yeah.
I don't know, what kind of sacrifice was that for you?
Yeah, I think that, well, for me, I mean, again, when I came into dance, I had already gone through gymnastics, but I can kind of talk in that region too because it's really similar. I think that when I was in about 3rd grade is when I started to be able to understand the importance of like priorities and things like that. Like I would say before 3rd grade, I would talk a lot about gymnastics. I love gymnastics. I loved going, but I just kind of thought it was fun or whatever. When I look at mementos from my 3rd grade year of school, I was just talking to my mom about this because I was just going through this like book of essays that I had from 3rd grade. I found a way to put I will be successful in gymnastics into every piece of schoolwork that I did. Like I would have hated to be
Oh
my
my
3rd grade
god.
teacher. I would have laughed so hard at myself if I had been my own teacher at that time because literally it would just be like a poem about fall, but I happened to have competition season in the fall. So instead of being a poem about leaves, it was a poem about my competition season. So like that's when I started to get really serious about things. And then when I switched to dance, I kind of brought that same mentality over with me. But I do think it's really interesting how like for me as a teacher now, I have kids about that age in ballet, and I do see some of them really start to be like tunnel vision focused on working
Hmm.
really hard. And others it takes them a little bit longer, and others then they start to realize that they don't have that drive in them. But it's really young that you start to get that perfectionism mentality drilled into you. And then once you're in like
Hmm.
middle school, I would say is when I started being like, I have to sacrifice things in order to go to dance. Like I have to say no to that in order to go to dance. I have to do this in order to go to dance. Like when you're younger, you kind of are just like, oh, I just want to be really good. So I'm going to work really hard to dance as much as I can and get as good as I can. Once you get into middle school, you start to see that the reason you need to sacrifice things in order to get better is because if you don't, you're not going to get any better. I don't know if that makes any sense, but you start to be more goal oriented, I would say, in middle school. So it's a lot easier to say, oh, I want to do this. So I'm like, I want to get this part in the Nutcracker this year. So this summer, I'm gonna skip out on camp and I'm gonna go to dance intensive instead.
But I was gonna say, like, yeah, I think that my age markers are really similar. I want to say it was around probably 3rd grade, 4th grade, 5th grade, that when I was like, I want to do this professionally. And then I remember picking up this like book from the library, and I forget what it was called, but it was this story about this girl who had like just gotten her point shoes, like the coveted thing. And all of her friends, she was in middle school, and all of her friends were like, it was so cliche. They were all like, we're gonna play soccer, we're gonna go to the school field trip, we're gonna like have boyfriends now, and like all these things. And she would constantly just be like, I have to go to dance, I have to go to dance, I have to go to dance. Like she would be sacrificing like what was just like huge milestones to her to go to dance. And at the end of the book, she skips dance class to go on a field trip. And for whatever reason, skipping one dance class for her meant like, I'm quitting, like I'm out, I'm done forever, I can never dance again. But I remember like reading this and being like, well, that was a stupid decision. Like, why doesn't she understand like you have to make sacrifices for your future? Like she must just not really want it, because she's gonna regret going on this field trip when she's 20 years old, because now she's not a professional dancer. Like that's the kind of like sacrifice mentality that gets drilled into your
Yeah.
head as
Yeah.
a young
Really.
person taking lessons in the arts. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. I have gotten taken out of pieces for missing one rehearsal in high school. That happened to me.
Yeah.
I was
Did
so
it
mad.
really?
I was so mad, but it was like before I actually kind of got roles at my studio. Like I was I was a freshman, was really new, like was very new on Studio Company, and wasn't really like, I was kind of a background character for a lot of like middle school stuff. So I wasn't really like spotlighted at all yet. And that's when I was doing gymnastics team, and I missed one rehearsal because I had a meet that day, and they took me out of the piece completely. And then they ended up putting me
Dang.
back in at the last minute, but they took me out. And I was so mad. I was like, this is crazy. But then also at the same time, I think that really drove my, like, at the same time, like, I can't mess around. Like, I can't miss stuff or I'm going to get taken out. And then I started working with that mentality. And then that's when I started getting a lot of roles. And I honestly think that I was getting those roles like a lot by chance, as it often happens in studio politics. It's just kind of like whoever they look at first. But because I got that like positive reward, that's when I really got that mentality. Like, I can't miss anything. I can't tell them that I'm going to miss anything. Like, there's like a no tolerance policy for missing or not putting dance first, like in front of anything. And then once I got out of high school, I learned a little bit more that I can focus on school and stuff like that. But it definitely still sticks with me, and it still sticks with me with like work too. Like even in working in other fields, like my other jobs, I still will be like talking to my boss. I'm like, I'm so sorry, but like my like family member has something going on today and I really need to go. Like I know that that's totally not okay, but like can I please get the day off? And they're like, what are you talking about? Like personal days are a thing. You can like have a day
Yep.
off for like time with your family. And I'm like, oh really? No, I'm not used to that
Yeah.
kind of thing. So it's kind of interesting
Well,
the
that
way that works
mentality,
out.
like with dance, yeah, it definitely is interesting, that mentality with dance specifically, where even if you have like a family engagement, or you're ill, like you're literally sick, like
Yeah.
it's not acceptable or excusable for you to miss. And that like continues at the collegiate level. Like in the dance program I'm in, we don't get any excused absences, not for
Yeah.
weddings, not for family birthdays, not for death in the family, not for you're literally ill. Like, if you're ill, you have to spend that entire day, instead of resting, you have to try and procure a $30 doctor's note from somewhere and hope someone has a car that they can drive you. Like, if you have a family engagement, you either have to lie about it, or you have to take the L. And it, in my
Yeah.
opinion, like expecting that level of commitment from anybody for any kind of career is toxic. I don't think that
Yeah.
it's right. But like, I also like, I understand what you're saying about like the idea that you can't ever miss anything, and your commitment to anything goes before what's going on in your personal life also
Yeah.
bleeds into
Yeah.
my work life. And it did
Mm-hmm.
take a while of like working as an independent tutor to like break that down and repeatedly have people be like, that's not a problem that you need to take your day off because it's your sister's birthday and your entire
Yeah.
family is in town. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Like, I mean, there's part of me that wants to say like that, like a lot of really serious sports, there are a lot of athletes who are taught that same mentality of that perfectionism and sacrifice. I think that that's something that a lot of athletes can share, like gymnasts, like baseball players, basketball players,
Oh,
football
for
players, like a
sure.
lot of those. I know so many people in so many sports who would say the same about their sport. And I think it's so interesting because it's one of those things that there's such a fine line where, yes, like, yeah, this is my priority. Like, yeah, I want to be good at this. So obviously it comes first. But I think that the line gets crossed a little bit once you start being like an adult and doing that. Like,
Hmm.
yeah, my career comes first. It's like any job. Like, you're not just going to skip out on work just because you like don't want to go that day or because you have a party that you want to go to that happens to land on a day that they really need you to work. But like at the same time,
Well,
there's
yeah,
also
it takes
that
like a
thing where it's like,
baseline level
don't
of
take away. Yeah,
responsibility.
exactly. Yeah. You know, so I think that's really interesting. So I think that transitions well into kind of the physical sacrifice, like Jane, you kind of already mentioned, like the sickness part. So just like working through stuff, I think that's another place where that perfectionism mentality gets too toxic is when we start teaching dancers,
Hmm.
especially young dancers, that that priority even comes through injury, sickness, mental health issues.
Hmm.
Like, even through all of that, you need to push and you need to keep getting better and things like that. Like,
Hmm.
I know a lot of people who have gotten injured and then been almost like gaslighted for their injuries and just been like, well, you shouldn't have gotten injured if you didn't want to get taken out of this thing. I mean, like, part of it is like, yes, if you get injured 2 weeks before the show, you're not going to be in the show. So like, if you're going to
Yeah,
complain
but
about
you
not being in the
shouldn't
show,
be
then
made to
you
feel
shouldn't have gotten
bad.
injured, quote unquote. But yeah, you
Yeah.
shouldn't be made to feel bad that you got injured, especially if, and this is for most cases that I'm talking about, examples that I know of this are people who got injured because they are overworked. And that happened to me in high school. It happened to me
Yep.
after high school. It's happened to me all the time. Like, that's not something that I'm saying about any one specific place that I was in. That's just a general phenomenon. There's so many people who get injured and then they just get told, like, well, you know, you should be more careful. But it's kind of
Hmm.
like gaslighting too, because we're taught to put ballet first and be like, okay, well, this is hurting a little bit, but I can push and I can get through it. And that's kind of seen as heroic and seen as like working hard and working through your struggles. But then you get injured and then it's, oh, like, you shouldn't have gotten injured if you didn't want to be, if you didn't want to sit on the sideline. So you better not complain. So I think that there's that kind of lack of support for people who are going through it.
No, there definitely is. And a lot of the time, like, there's a really fine line between, oh, this hurts a little, I'm going to push
Yeah.
through it, and oops, now I'm injured. And it's
Mm-hmm.
not like you are praised for, like, we used to have a teacher that would be like, oh, like, now is the time to be the hero, or now isn't the time to be the
Yeah.
hero. And it's like, well, A, you don't get to decide that for me. And B, like, sometimes you think it's okay to be the hero and then it turns
Mm-hmm.
out you're overworked and bam, now you have a stress reaction. And that doesn't always happen. Like, sometimes there are things that come and go away. That happens with anyone's body. But
Yeah.
there is a very, very, very fine line between knowing when to push through something and literally being asked to like sacrifice your body for a performance. And it's especially difficult, I think, as a kid, that concept to understand because you're
Yeah.
worried about being in trouble for being injured. And I get it a little bit more when you are working in a company and you have an obligation, like an occupational obligation to
Yeah.
the people you are working for. But when you're a kid and you are paying to take lessons, and this mentality of kill your body so you can have the god
Yeah.
tier opportunity of being in this performance, is it's a bit rough. It's
Mm-hmm.
a bit rough. But it's
Yeah.
expected. It is expected.
Yeah, for sure. And like illness and things like that too. Like, it's really hard, especially when you're a kid too. I remember being in high school and really struggling with trying to decide when I was too sick to go to dance and when I was like, okay, I can sit on the side or I can make it through this class. Like, I struggled a lot with like I just started developing my kind of bad asthma that I dealt with in college. I barely just started developing it like winter of my senior year. And I remember I had the worst anxiety over it because I could not figure out like what was wrong. My asthma up until then had always been like, if I got sick, I just got a little bit more swollen, like windpipe area than everybody else. Like, I just needed an extra inhaler sooner than anyone else did. Like, literally, basically, I didn't even have it. I just had a rescue inhaler because that's where colds would hit me. And that was the first time that I was like, wow, I actually have to take my inhaler like every day for like the last week. And I was doing really intense rehearsals, and they were solo rehearsals. So I wasn't going to be like, oh, I can't do it. Let me sit out on the side. Like, it was solo. So that was one of the first times I had to deal with that. And it was really hard. And it was really hard to talk to everybody about it, because I was trying to say, I think it's my asthma. I'm not sure. And then my parents would say, well, if it's your asthma, then we need to go get it checked out. And I was like, yeah, but I feel like it's not that bad. Like, I also kind of feel like I'm just overreacting, or maybe I was just stressed out because I'm doing solo work. And the same thing happened to me in college when I was at City Ballet my
Mm-hmm.
first year, and that's when my asthma actually got bad, because I was in the dorms,
Yeah, it
and
got really bad that year.
I'm pretty sure I had like mold in my room or something, because I'm on UCSD all the time now and my asthma is like pretty much gone. But that time was
Oh, you definitely
awful
had
because
mold in your room.
I don't know what, yeah, but I'm guessing that's what it is.
Like,
I mean, those dorms were not
let me
pristine
just
at
tell you
all,
right now.
but like that time also was another, like, I would kind of sit in my dorm, and I would be like, I would sit out of class, and I would be sitting while everybody was in class, so then I didn't have anybody to talk to because y'all were in class and I was sitting at home. And I would sit in my dorm, and I would just be like, man, I'm just so lazy. Like, I'm not going to get promoted ever. Like, I'm not going to get anything. Like, everybody probably just thinks that I'm sitting out. Like, all the automatic thoughts from perfectionism hit you really hard
Mm-hmm.
when you're sitting on the sidelines. And that's why it's really hard to be a sick or injured dancer. And I think that's a lot of athletes can relate to that. But it's
Mm-hmm.
really weird and rough to deal with things like that when you're a young person, especially. And even when you're older, I mean, I can't imagine what it's like to go through a pregnancy as a ballet dancer. Like, I can't
I
even
wonder that
imagine.
all the time. Like, I really think
Like,
I
because
would just
to
call
go
it
through your
quits.
first pregnancy as a dancer who is taught, like, you can't stop dancing, like, you got to keep going. And also, like, dancers are kind of taught to take what doctors say with a grain of salt, which partially is
Mm-hmm.
because, yes, like, a lot of doctors aren't dance therapists specifically, or even sports therapists specifically, so they have a hard time really saying when you can keep going and when you can rest, because they really just want you to rest.
Yes.
So you're taught to take it with a grain of salt. I can't imagine what it's like to be raised with that mentality and then have your doctor be like, okay, you need to stop dancing now. And be like, no, I can make it through class still. And they're like, yeah, but there's a human child inside you, my friend. I can't imagine what I
I
would
think
do.
I think if
I
there's
wouldn't be
like
able to make
any
those
like
decisions.
no, if there's any like perfect dancers have no like dancers are taught to sacrifice to the very end example, it is what Kalena is talking about right now, because we all have seen the video of a very famous dancer, very, very pregnant, doing fouettes on point. We have
Yeah.
all seen it, and it's like, wow, no one normal would be doing that, but that's
And you're like,
really
yeah, that's
just
right. Nobody
like
normal would be
the
doing that.
sacrifice mentality
Yeah.
personified in a person.
Yeah. And of course,
And
I mean,
I
like, we
honestly
mean
like
like no shade towards that person individually. It's just like, it's just a funny way to look at like how our industry works. Like, keep going till the end, and then it's like, wow, you're so cool. Like, you're doing that with, like, you're that pregnant and you can still do that. That's so impressive and so crazy. Instead of being like, ooh, are you sure you're okay? Like, you probably need rest. Like, I mean, it ended
yeah,
up
like have you
fine,
thought
but
about yourself lately? Yeah, it ended up
yeah.
fine, but
It's just interesting
yeah.
how our mentality works like that. It's just like, wow, that person is super in. Or like when somebody gets injured on stage and then they finish the whole thing, everybody's like, "Oh, you're such a hero! Like, you finished that, even though you're like Achilles." Like, I hear stories all the time. Everybody who tears their Achilles tendon in dance does it on stage. I've never heard of it happening in a studio. It always happens on stage, and they always finish the whole thing. And every time I'm like, somebody tells me one of those stories, I'm like,
Couldn't be
I'm
me.
leaving this profession. I would not be able to do that. So I hope y'all are ready to be
Yeah,
real disappointed
no.
in your girl. But
I
yeah.
think it's also interesting the point you brought up about being taught to kind of take what doctors say with a grain of salt, because to an extent, like, yes, there are doctors that do not understand the physical demands of dance because A, maybe they're sport doctors and they've only seen the physical demands of like football, baseball, basketball, whatever, and they're just
Yeah.
not like they're truly not familiar with what's going on in your body. But I will say, even when you go to a doctor who either has danced professionally or went through a college dance program or has worked with dancers before, you're still skeptical of what they have to say. And the reason you're skeptical is because you are worried about what your peers and your artistic director are going to think of you if you follow their advice the first time instead of trying to take matters into your own hands. For example, when I was 17 and I had pneumonia mono the flu, and I went to the doctor and she discovered that I had, at the time, she just discovered that I had pneumonia and I had had it for a bit. She was very, like, she actually yelled at me in front of my mom in the office, and she was like, I cannot believe you have traveled twice with this. I cannot believe you have danced with this. You could have been hospitalized. Like, you need to stop. And I didn't stop. I was back in the studio 3 days later
Yeah.
because that's is the mentality.
Yeah, that's just how it is.
Yeah,
It's really interesting. Like,
you shouldn't be taught to not trust doctors, is what I'm getting at. Like, that's something that we should
yeah.
probably stop doing in the dance world.
Yeah, yeah. It's so strange. And like things like that are so subtle too. Like I try to be really careful with my little ones because I mean, it's not
Mm-hmm.
like they're 6 years old and there are, I mean, I'm sure there are somewhere, but at least not at any studio that I'm teaching at. There's not teachers that have a 6-year-old come in with a cough and be like, you better shut up and finish your sautés. Like, don't do that. Obviously, I'm not saying that I'm correcting for the people around me that do that because I don't know where they are. I don't see them. They don't exist. But just like, I
Mm-hmm.
try to be really careful with my girls and try to say, like, you know, even though they're not really facing that yet and maybe they don't even know what's ahead of them yet, like I try to tell them, like, you know, if you're ever feeling sick, you can sit out. Like you just raise your hand, like you need to
Mm-hmm.
speak up. Like I know that I'm the teacher and I'm the boss and everything, but you are the boss of you, because if your arm is hurting or if your throat is hurting or something's wrong, then I can't feel it for you. So I try to tell them, like, hey, you guys can tell me, like, if something's up. Like, I think, like, tell me if even if something just hurts and you don't want it to just be like, something hurts. I don't feel good. And I'll say, okay, chill out, sit down, take a break. Like, I'm not gonna
Yeah.
push you guys through that. You know, like trying to teach dancers that even though they are, we're taught to be very submissive and very, 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 I don't know, just like controlled by the person at the front of the room. We still need to teach each other that, you know, we have that independence and we have that choice to say, you know, I'm not doing okay, I need to sit down or whatever.
Okay, so at this point, we're gonna call it halfway on our episode. I'm gonna throw it to a little bit of an advertisement break, and then we're gonna come back and we're gonna answer some questions that you guys asked us.
Q&A.
I almost said we're gonna question some answers. We'll actually do that too,
Oh,
so stay tuned.
question some answers. We should have people do that, like submit a statement and we'll just judge you.
Jeopardy
right.
style Q&A.
All right. Anyways, see you after the break. Hi, Kalena here. Before we get back into this amazing interview, I wanted to take a moment to talk about how you can support On the Other Foot. If you haven't yet, be sure to check us out on our Patreon, which is linked from our website and Instagram. Patrons receive extra VIP benefits like free merch, early access to episodes, and in-episode credit for supporting our podcast. Thank you, patrons, for your continuing support of our pod. All right, y'all, we are back from our little breaky break, and now we're going to do some Q&A, or A and Q, as Jane almost tried to say it. So we asked you guys on both of our personal Instagrams and on the pod Instagram to submit some questions, so we picked a few. And we're just going to go through these bad boys and answer them and kind of give our
I'm going to
statements.
No, I'm just going to say my answer and then they guess the question.
Oh, yeah. Woohoo. All right. Well, to start us off, my friend submitted, what is your favorite childhood TV show, Jane? This is the lightest question. It's the best. I love it. I'm not getting rid of it.
Oh yeah, it's also the one that's not related to the topic. We're just having fun now. My favorite childhood show, I really went hard for Phineas and Ferb.
Oh my god, I wasn't allowed to watch Phineas and Ferb. I can't believe you were allowed to watch that. I wasn't allowed to watch Phineas and Ferb or SpongeBob, so I'm one of those people that doesn't have a sense of humor. That's what people say about me.
Oh, I wasn't allowed to watch SpongeBob either, but I was allowed to watch Phineas and Ferb, and I used to YouTube to MP3 all of the songs and then upload them onto my iPod.
Oh my god, that's incredible. When I was in kindergarten, I
Yeah.
was obsessed with Kim Possible. I went through a lot of different phases in elementary school. I was a bit like major Kim Possible fan. I watched all of Hannah Montana, but I think that was kind of just a cult
Yes.
favorite, so I'm not sure. What show did I
That's a
really
really
like?
basic answer, Kalena.
Yeah, that's why I don't want to say that was my favorite show, because like literally everybody and their mother watched that show. Like I watched it the most, but I don't think it was my favorite necessarily. I think Kim Possible was probably my favorite. I always
It's a good
liked
one.
like my mom has commented before that as a child I was always obsessed with movies that had like a bad female lead character, like beat people
Mm-hmm.
up, run out in the streets, save the world kind of gal. If it didn't have that kind of girl in the show, I was not for it. But like Kaleigh's role model as a child was Sharpay Evans, so that shows how we were different. Like
That's amazing.
my favorite character in kindergarten was Kim Possible, and Kaleigh's was Sharpay Evans, and that is how we became very different people.
I had a Kim
Just
Possible
kidding, love
umbrella in
Kaleigh.
kindergarten, so we would have been friends.
Umbrella? I didn't have that.
Yeah,
I just had the CD, and I listened to the music.
it's good music.
I
What can
listened to
say?
all the songs. Okay, moving on. Now
Next
that we have
question.
that personality trait established. Phineas and Ferb. I can't believe your favorite show is Phineas and Ferb. I thought you were going to say like Arthur or something.
I loved Arthur.
I know, that's why I thought you were
went
going to say
so
that. I was like,
hard
because I saw this
would
question,
like
I was
to
trying to
change
think.
my answer. the library episode of Arthur where they sing the Jekyll and Hyde song.
Yeah.
Yeah. Anyway,
Yes,
really moving
that one
on
was
now.
excellent. Okay, actually
So
moving on.
this was a question. Oh no, this was a
We
pod
got on the
question.
pod.
Yeah, I was gonna be like, I got on my personal account. No, this is a pod. It asks for opinions on companies raising immense amounts. I'm sorry, this one just kills me. Opinions on companies raising immense amounts of money and not defining where it's going. For context, we asked ask us your questions about like the arts during COVID. We'll share our unfiltered opinions.
Yeah.
I hadn't considered this before this question was asked, because
I definitely have.
as someone who grew up in ballet, I just kind of accept like, oh, dancers don't get paid, and then I don't know what companies spend money on. We think it's props. Oh no.
Nope.
So my opinions on this, it's very aligned with my opinions with the rest of the shortcomings of dance companies, which is they should run like a regular business. They should have an HR department, and they should have a very clear mission statement. They should have very transparent financial transactions. They should have, like, I think that all companies should have transparent, like, payroll. I don't think it should be taboo to talk about your salary with other people, because that helps people leverage their salary negotiations, especially for like underrepresented minority groups. I don't like that companies are just raising immense amounts of money while they're simultaneously either not paying or firing a lot of dancers. Like, I know this is a really hard time for the arts, but I do feel like the money companies raise should be used to support their dancers, because the dancers are what, like, we have such a mentality of like, oh, there's so many dancers who could take your spot, but really at the end of the day, like, if a company doesn't have any dancers, there is no company. And so I don't love that companies are allowed to do this, and I don't love that we don't know where the money is going. And I think that we should.
Yeah, I honestly, like, a lot of ballet companies operate a lot like a 1920s speakeasy for me, and
what's the password?
Yeah, like you go into the bathroom of a restaurant and there's just like a ballet company down there. I mean, it's because you know, the arts are just so immensely like undersupported in the United States, and that makes like no sense, but it makes sense why then they operate that way. But at the same time, you know, like there's no reason to then not be transparent about what you're doing, because a lot of times transparency ends up upping the communication, which ends up getting you more donors anyways. Because if you actually show, hey, we have legit like $1,000 for this entire season, please help,
Yeah.
then it'll be a lot easier. I mean, I'm not saying they need to like post on Instagram here, like here's exactly how much money we have in our bank account right now, because like nobody does that. But
Yeah.
just being more transparent to people, because donors are like stockholders in a major company. They
Mm-hmm.
invest a lot of their money, and dancers invest a lot of their time to dance for companies.
Mm-hmm.
So, as an employee of the regular world, I don't want to work somewhere that's not going to be worth my while. And if some place is really trying to hide that much, like their financial transactions, trying to hide how much they pay their dancers, trying to hide how many positions they have available, or just not saying at all, then that is a big red flag to me that that company doesn't have those things. Because
Mm-hmm.
if they were doing well, if they did have those spots, even if they were honest and saying, we don't have that much money, we can only give our dancers this much, that shows me that that's an honest company, and a company that cares about its dancers, and a company that they're proud of what they do. They're showing it off. They're saying, we've been so happy to be fortunate enough to have this and this and this. I feel like a lot of companies are afraid to say what they have in
Mm-hmm.
fear that people won't donate anymore. But
Mm-hmm.
in reality, that just makes your company a lot more trustworthy, just like with any major corporation.
Yeah,
When
especially
you
with
look
the
at stocks,
arts.
to invest in stocks, you look at whether the company is doing well or doing poorly. And
Yep.
sometimes if a company's doing poorly, that's when you invest, because you make bank that way.
That's true. No, it's true. And it's not like it's not that difficult, I think, because there's so many companies who specifically label their GoFundMe's as COVID artist relief.
Yeah.
Like post how get your dancers
In what
together.
ways?
Whoever
Yeah.
has like received money from this campaign, like have them make an Instagram post and be like, "Thank you." Like I feel
Yeah,
more. They don't even have to
exactly.
say what they spent it on. Just be like,
Yeah.
"I was supported by my company. I'm still being paid." Like you don't have to say
Yeah.
how much, but
Yeah.
the especially like I mean I obviously can't speak for anyone, this is hypothetical. If there's any companies that are like taking the artist relief and then putting it into like a
But you
fund
cut
for
out.
a new production, like obviously that sucks and I hope no one's doing that, but even if they're not, just some level of transparency, some like bragging about how you're still paying your employees would be cool.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly.
It would be cool.
Like, I think that the studio that I teach for, like Southern California Ballet, does a really good job with. They have a gala every year, and they're really good about being really specific with, they don't they don't hand out receipts to everybody at the studio saying, here's your exact dollar amount and exactly where it went and stuff like that. But they're really clear
Yeah.
about every year with their gala. They say, this is our specific cause this year. Like one year they were saying, one fundraiser they were saying, this is for our scholarship fund. And then they showed like, we were able to give scholarships to this many dancers this year because of this fundraiser. So then when people come back the next year for the
Mm-hmm.
fundraiser, they're like, wow, I'm going to donate a lot more because I want 5 more kids to get scholarships this year. They're really good about that. And I think
Yeah.
it's really great. Like, it's really helpful. I don't understand what the negative is to doing that kind of thing. So
No
going
idea.
on, what have our lives looked like revolving around dance in quarantine? And this is the $1 million question for every dancer in every country on the planet Earth, because the answer for everybody is it has looked like a hot mess, garbage fire, giant dumpster filled with just debris, and it's on fire and lightning is striking down at it, but at the same time there's like 2 flowers in one corner and they're doing pretty well, but like the rest of it is just like a heaping mess. And
Mm-hmm.
so yeah, that's kind of how I would describe it for myself. I've been teaching a lot, so honestly, even on those like 4 weeks in a row that you're like, I can't do this anymore, I'm just going to take a mental health break from dancing for this 1 week, and then it turns into 6 weeks. Even for those weeks, I ended up turning out at least once a week to stand in first position to demonstrate a plie exercise. But I mean, sometimes that was about it. But other weeks, I did the lines intensive and I danced for 8 hours a day for 2 weeks straight. And it was exhausting. It was really fun the first week, and then it was really exhausting. But it was still like a great experience. So I think like I had fun dancing a lot, but I also had a lot of fun dancing a little. And there was a lot of struggle that I had to deal with, but there was also a lot that I learned about myself and about my relationship with dance and where I want to go next. And also just learning to say, this is where I am right now. I have literally no clue if in a year from now we'll be anywhere back to normal, if there will be any jobs out there for me and things like that. So it's
Yeah.
been A heaping garbage fire. So I mean, that's kind of how I would describe it for myself. What about you?
What about you? She says, knowing what I'm about to say. So
Yeah, like we haven't been in contact.
yeah, actually, Kalena and I, we actually don't speak to each other outside of the podcast. So no, I'm kidding. Yeah, no. So I have had uh, uh, I've had a difficult I've
Good
had a
time.
difficult summer personally. And so I have not danced since my ballet, no, since, yes, my jazz final, which would have been Thursday of
June.
finals week. I have not taken, yes, mid June, early mid
June
June.
11th.
I have
Friday
not
was the 12th.
taken
I don't know why I
June
remember that, but
11th.
it was the 11th.
Thank you, thank you. Wow. All right, I haven't danced since June 11th. It is now August 16th. So do the math. I haven't danced in studio. I have not danced in a studio since March 13th. And
Yeah.
I am just like, I'm in Irvine. The main studio I would have taken classes at around here is really financially affected by COVID-19. So I can't take an in studio class. My school is online in fall. It will probably be online in the winter. I have no idea what's going on for spring. I'm not in a financial position to be able to pay for classes right now. I hate
Yep.
dancing at home over Zoom.
Yep.
So I'm literally, I have not danced in over 2
Yeah.
months, and I don't know if I will be going back anytime soon. It's really
Yeah.
dependent on a lot of things.
Yeah.
But my body has stayed in some kind of dancing shape, so that was nice of it.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I kind of like, I went all over the place. Like, I work out a lot for mental health reasons. I absolutely turn into a swirling tornado of anger if I do not exercise. Like, I don't know why, but it's just how I am. And so, in order to live peacefully within my own home with my own family, I worked out a lot, but I worked out like normal gym wise a lot more. And like Kalei has been killing it. Like, girlfriend takes straight up like 6 hours of class every day, hasn't stopped dancing, hasn't
Oh
even
my
taken a week
god.
off. She took this last week off because she got her wisdom teeth out.
Oh
Like,
my god.
like she physically couldn't dance. But that's like it. So, I mean, some people are just going off, and some people are going off the radar, if you know what I mean.
Yeah, I
like,
mean, I like
like,
have the opposite approach to mental health that Kalenda does, where I was struggling really heavily with like body dysmorphia before COVID,
yeah,
and so when I realized that this was kind of my time to not have to feel like I need to be improving my body and see where that takes my mental health, I've actually been happier and I see myself in a different
yep.
light. So I have, on top of not dancing, I have also been, as they say, not exercising. um, unless you count moving heavy boxes in and out of my car and into various places of living and then walking around my campus. I haven't been inactive, but I have not been anywhere near as active as I have been for the rest of my life
Yeah,
since the beginning
yeah,
of time.
yeah. I mean, I think that the golden ticket to surviving quarantine for me has just been, even though I, have been exercising a lot and have been moving around just because I literally would implode if I didn't. I think the key has been being very accepting with myself. And I think I fought that
Mm-hmm.
battle about 16 times. Sometimes it's once a week, sometimes it's 16 times in one day. And, you know, I've gone through so many different phases. Like, I've gone through writing down my workouts to motivate myself and stay on track. I've gone through just letting myself take 6 weeks off of exercising at all. I've gone through being really productive. I've gone through not being productive at all. But the biggest thing is that the whole time I've had to be very okay with it. And that's the hardest part.
Yep.
Is that no matter, even if you're doing your best or doing your worst, you have to just be like, this is always my best. Like, whatever, when I wake
Yes.
up, whatever I want to do that day, that's the best I can do. You cannot expect yourself in this time to be like, I'm going to get up and do these things today. And if I don't, I am literally a shell of a person and I'm awful. Because what is everybody else getting done? Like, nobody's getting anything done. Some people are, but I
And
mean,
people
it's
who
only
say they're
sometimes.
getting, I'm sorry, those people are liars.
They're really good at making it look like they're getting things done.
Then people do
But
be
no matter what
lying.
you're getting done, it's not what you thought you were going to be getting done right now, so it's still better than nothing. So that's what I would say.
Yeah, I had plans to move to Los Angeles this summer, do the LAB intensive, and get a writing
Yeah.
internship.
Yeah.
Rip.
Like,
Anyway, okay. So the next question. Wait, did you
final
have more you wanted to
question.
say?
No, that's it.
Okay.
That's all I want to say is
This
literally
final
there's
question.
nothing.
Fair. Okay, so this final question is: how can male dancers seek to build camaraderie in a female-dominant field like ballet? And I don't know. Maybe Kalena has something to say about this, but
I don't know. Well,
I don't know.
Yeah, I thought this was a really interesting question because I mean, I think that the person who's asking this, I'm not sure if they mean like between each other or between male and female dancers, but
Yeah.
because you're asking us and we are quite visibly female, you mean like male to female, and I think there's the biggest thing is just like really communicating and really being respectful, like girl to girl ballet
Mhm.
is rough and boy to girl is
Mhm.
rough. So there's just a lot of
Mhm.
roughness going on there. I mean, there's a lot of competition between girls, but girls are kind of all going through it, so I think we get it. Boys go through their own stuff and they're always going through it too, so I feel like boys get
Mhm.
boys and girls get girls, but boys understanding girls and girls understanding guys struggles in ballet is a lot harder to put together. And I think that it's just communication, like being really open and honest and having that sense of like being able to vent to your coworkers and, being really just respectful of like boundaries at all times on both sides, like whatever that
Yep.
person's
Yep.
comfortable with. And it can change day to day. And that's not even like a crazy like BPC, like watch yourself, like always ask, whether somebody's okay with doing something at all. Like I
Which
I
do
mean
those things.
obviously yes, but I mean even on top of that, even just daily interactions, like you see like girls are really good at like another girl walks into the studio, you can tell that girl is pissed that day about
Yes.
whatever that she's
Yes.
mad about, and that is her problem and that's okay, but like I'm gonna be careful with that person today. I feel like guys aren't as good as reading that on girls, and girls aren't as good as reading that on guys either. Like I could have a male dancer walk into the studio and be like, hey, what's up, and they're like, don't talk to me, and I'm like, I'm so sorry. I don't know what I did, but okay. I think that it's just that kind of thing, like just really communicating and really like not being offended too if somebody gets upset, because it's just like everybody's always stepping on glass in ballet, and I wish it wasn't like that. And it's another thing that's
Mhm.
really toxic about the industry is just how much time you spend with everybody and how much competition there is between everybody is always mad at each other all the time.
It's
It's
true.
always
It's
changing.
true.
You can come in date like one day you are friends with everybody, one day everybody hates you, next day you come in everybody's friends with you again, but maybe not these three people, but maybe another person, and then maybe it's okay, and then maybe it's not okay again, and it just goes all over the place and it's crazy. But for guys, I think, I mean, seeking to build camaraderie, I think just also just talking to other male dancers and being really open and being really non-judgmental and being okay with like talking to each other. I don't know how it is for guys. I don't know, like I don't want to speak on it because I feel like there's a lot of stigma where we say like, oh, it's so easy for guys in ballet, like everything is so simple, like they don't struggle at all. And like, yeah, there's a lot less guys in ballet, so there's a big tendency to say that it's easier to get a quote unquote easier to get a job and things like that, but I think they have a lot of struggles too. And I think just making sure that you communicate with everyone so that like your friends know when you're struggling, and you know when your friends are struggling and things like that. So I mean, just stuff like that. Like I would say communication is the most important
Yeah.
thing always. And I mean, that's a big reason why we started this podcast, is because there's a lot of stuff that goes on in ballet that just happens. Like that's just how it is, and we try our best to kind of talk about those issues and create that communication and create those conversations so that we don't have that awful awkward tension where you like know that everybody's having the same problem as you but nobody's talking about it kind of thing. Like like
Yes.
just communicate with each other. It's okay. You can talk to each other. It's
Yeah, I
fine.
think
Like I just need everybody to at the same
also
time to
like
be like, it's okay to talk about these things, and then we would all get along.
yeah, and I think
Sorry, that
like
was a long
Nicholas
rant.
Rose No, I mean
Mm-hmm.
it was a needed rant. Like Nicholas Rose is doing a really great job, I think, right now of demonstrating
Mm-hmm.
like how difficult and how unseen the struggles for male dancers are, especially from his position as a male dancer of color. And obviously, I
Yeah.
can't identify with being either of those things because I am a white
Mm-hmm.
female. Um,
Mm-hmm.
but I would also say, like, male dancers, if you want to build camaraderie, I don't think you should be as focused on building camaraderie like in a female dominant field like ballet. I would say, like, just focus on building camaraderie as dancers, because
Yeah.
especially in this time right now, Nicholas Rose is doing a very good job of telling us, like, if you are a, even in dance where, like, if you are a white straight male dancer, you have positions of power in a dance company as a white straight male
Yeah.
dancer that white female straight male dancers don't have, that people of color dancers don't have, that
Mm-hmm.
just you are at an advantage, the same advantage you have like with you in society every day, you do carry into the dance world. And so I would say,
Yeah.
like, please be in your communication with other male dancers and with other female dancers, please use your want to build camaraderie also as a want to share what you are making with this company, a want to share what people in power are saying to you that maybe puts you in a higher position than the person next to you, who is
Yeah.
in a minority group. Like, in your attempt to build camaraderie, use your want of friendship as a way of building other people in the company up who are not getting the same opportunities as you. Allow, like, help them try to negotiate their contracts, help them try to negotiate their salary, stand up for people in
Yeah.
rehearsals. Like Nicholas Rose is saying so many times, like, he's called the
Mm-hmm.
wrong name, he's called the name of the only other black male dancer the National Ballet of Canada
Yeah.
all the time. And like, if you are trying to build camaraderie with your fellow dancers in a rehearsal, stand up for that person, speak out. Like, in this want to communicate, you need to communicate the hard things as well. And so I would say, for male dancers, like, if you are looking to build camaraderie within your company with your fellow dancers and not just to like kiss up to the artistic staff, like, you're gonna have to start using your position
Yeah.
as a male dancer to really speak up for people who are not getting the same opportunities.
Yeah, for sure. You know what I think we need to
Yeah.
bring back is we need to bring back the how many are there? Five pillars of character from elementary school. Did you have to do that? Did you have to
No,
go
I
to
was
assemblies
homeschooled.
about the pillars of character? Oh right, you were
I
homeschooled.
was homeschooled.
Man, it was like
Thank you for asking that.
you would go into the whatchamacallit, NPR, the multi-purpose room. You would sit down. On the walls, there's these gigantic tapestry looking, or sometimes they were just like plastic, like tassel things hanging from the ceiling. And there was like fairness, respect, citizenship, trustworthiness, and what was the last one? They were colors
Kalena's
of the
just sitting
rainbow.
with her arms above her head like she's a pillar.
Well, because I was showing they're like little pillars. My friend's mom made them for our elementary school.
Oh.
But like you go to the assembly and they literally just talk about it for like an hour. And now that I coach, like the kids that I coach, I have to tell them, I have to give them lectures about it. You know, it's just the 5 pillars of what is the last one? It's like courage or something. I'm
Yeah,
gonna look it
bring
up.
those back. Whatever basic forms of human empathy those represent, we could really use.
Yeah, they're literally just
like
like basic, like how to be a good human being. And I think that we just need caring. Oh, that's right, caring. Sorry, maybe I'm just not good at that one. That's why I got bad.
No.
Couldn't remember it.
You are
Trustworthiness, respect, caring, citizenship, and fairness. Okay, y'all. That's what we need. Dance world everywhere. I don't care what position you are. I don't care where you are. There's no like we need a revolution in dance. We need everything to change. Like this the way that things work is so toxic and so awful and so terrible and just crazy. But also if like we don't want to get rid of it. Like we want to be able to dance, you know. It's what we do. So, you know, if everybody just walked around with a little bit more 5 pillars of character in their back pocket, maybe then we would all get along a little better. And I know I literally sound like the most like
I think
mom
that's our
Facebook
first
ever
t-shirt
right now,
design.
but like little 5 pillars of character in your back pocket, my friends.
I think that would
Do
be an
it.
excellent t-shirt design if we have the 5 pillars of character and then your quote underneath.
Are they licensed?
I'm not joking.
Is that copyrighted?
They can't be licensed. There's no way that's copyrighted.
I don't know.
No way.
We'll see.
Well,
anyways, that's the main. That's
anyway.
the message for today: is be nice, communicate, be a good citizen, stick up for your friends, be respectful to your friends and your coworkers and your
Don't
dancers
sacrifice your
and your
bodily
teachers.
health at the age of 13 for the Nutcracker.
Make sure that everything that's going on is fair in the company. Make sure that you as a director or you as a dancer are caring for your fellow dancers or your employees or your teachers or your directors or whatever. And make sure that you guys are trustworthy. Like, release y'all receipts so that we can see, you know, whether that's somewhere that we want to dance or not. Because, you know, if I come to a company and I don't like it, I'm going to leave. And then you lost a dancer in the middle of the season. And it's like, I'm sorry, but you guys didn't tell me about XYZ ABCD.
Yep.
So yeah,
yep.
That was this Kalena Gets Sassy portion of the podcast that happens every Uncut. There's always like a Kalena talks for 20 minutes straight uninterrupted and doesn't breathe the entire time. And then there's like a Kalena Gets Sassy for 5 minutes uninterrupted and doesn't breathe the entire time. And we've had both, so.
There's also like Jayne becomes Karl Marx halfway through an episode. I'm kidding. For anyone who's listening to this and is like, oh my god, she's like, I'm not a communist. It was a joke. Thank you. Come again. Please listen and support this podcast. Okay, I did want to say quickly before we wrap up, aside from me not being a communist, if there is anybody who listens to this podcast that has like a dance related story about how like maybe they weren't treated fairly like they should have been, or hey, this happened to me while I was growing up dancing and like it's not super traumatic but I don't want it to happen to anyone else and I think like we could learn from it, or if you just have like a niche topic that you've always wanted talked about, we would like to have you on, please. Like, we only have so much perspective. We've only worked for so many people. We've only been around so many blocks. But, you know, the dance world's really, like, coming together right now, and it's really a beautiful thing. A lot of people are speaking up, just kind of within the arts in general. I saw a violinist from PNB is, you know, kind of speaking up, too, about, like, the type of training she went through and things she experienced, and just, you know, if you've grown up in the arts and you have something you'd like to talk about that you're passionate about, we would like to give you, albeit a small platform, we'd still like to share it with you. So yeah,
of course. I mean, that's what this podcast is for. Like we keep saying, like there are things that we don't talk about, and I think that we're finally in a time that a lot of people are agreeing with a lot of the reasons we started this. I mean, I think they always did, but a lot of people are being more public about saying, you know, we don't talk about this, and this, and this, and this, and this, and this. And then everybody's like, oh my God, like you can't talk about that. And then it's like, why not?
It's like, yes, we can.
Like,
watch me do it.
Hello? Why not? Yeah, like we're going to do it. Like I see people who are like, oh my gosh, Nicholas Rose should not be doing that. Like, oh my gosh, like he's gonna get like whatever. I'm like, I guarantee you that he and everybody else would rather be treated like a human being than to shut up and deal with it for the rest of their life and then get left with a bunch of trauma. So we hope you guys enjoyed this Uncut. We know you guys like the Uncuts because we are maniacs and we are a little more maniacal during our Uncuts. So
sorry, before we really leave this time, if you've made it this far, then our 1 year anniversary of this shindig is August 23rd, and we plan on doing giveaways and having stickers. Yeah, it's this Sunday, so follow us on Instagram at otherfoot.pod and be ready to enter them giveaways because we know you have nothing else to be doing.
Get excited about these giveaways because they're gonna happen and they're gonna be great and they're gonna be awesome, and they're also gonna be great and they're gonna be awesome. So don't miss out because we're actually doing a cool giveaway this time.
Yeah.
See y'all next time, Otherfoot podcasters. If any of y'all have like a fan name that we want me to call you, then shout it out. But I don't have one for now. So Otherfoot podcast listener people, thank you so much for listening. We'll see you next week for another episode. And yeah, thank you as always for your support. And we'll see you in a couple weeks. Adios.
Goodbye. Stay healthy.
We hope you enjoyed this week's episode of On the Other Foot.
We want to connect with you on days other than Tuesday, so be sure to follow us on Instagram and Facebook at otherfoot.pod.
And visit our website to learn more about how On the Other Foot started and join our mailing list.
If you have any questions for me and Jane, or would like to suggest a topic or guest, email us at ontheotherfoot.podcast@gmail.com.
And please subscribe. It makes a huge difference to us. We want to offer you all discount codes and annoy you with sponsorship ads, and we cannot do that unless you subscribe. So please, do it now.
And above all, thanks for listening. It really means a lot to us. We hope you tune in to On the Other Foot next week for more conversation on the world of dance.